Well, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, so let's kind of run through some of the questions, really just try and like get a sense of what you're doing, how you've gotten to where you're at. Go on any tangents that you want. And yeah, that sound good to you?
Yeah, sounds perfect. Thanks.
Sick. So what do you how do you kind of look at the whole year? And this is kind of like a big question, but I think for a lot of cyclists, there's a lot of people that listen that are self-coached, and it's like there's a base season, there's pre-race, there's racing. Like, how do you view it though? Every athlete kind of has their own tweak on it. And let us know, do you work with a coach? Do you do everything on your own? What sort of, as you're coming out of winter, what's your sort of mindset of crafting everything together for the upcoming year?
Yeah. So the winter I like to get a lot of base training and I like to train a lot. So I always train between beginning of November until the end of December, beginning of January, and then we'll head over to Europe for some training camps. And then the season can typically start end of January, beginning of February, or late February, depending on how your race schedule is. But once you get your race schedule, you can really sit down with your coach and plan out your year, or at least plan out the first half of the year.
Mm.
Um, and to kind of you pick a couple target races, and you really try and build up to these points because at this level of racing, it's hard to be like when you're at your top level, you can only kind of hold that level for a certain amount of time. And there's quite a big difference between your top level and then when you're just good. I try to be good all year, like keep my weight and keep a good level of fitness all year. But then you can really tailor the training to get to a peak, so to speak. And this is when you have your target races and you try to obviously get a nice result. So yeah, it takes a lot of planning from your coach and management and the team that you're in, and also yourself. It's a lot of dedication and hard work because sometimes your A races or your target races can be late in the season, like October, and you just have to keep that focus because the season's super long in cycling.
I was gonna I mean, the season is so long for you guys, and I think now, like in the US for amateurs, I mean, I remember back I lived in upstate New York, so racing kind of started in March, but it was still snowing. But it was really like April until Green Mountain in Vermont, and then it was over, and there was like a hard set. Now there's gravel. Now it's going into November and maybe even December, and people travel more. How do you like it's just so long. How do you pick those peak races that you want to do well at, the best at?
Yeah, I mean, so you pick the races that you want to do best at, kind of based off how you see yourself as a rider. Um, so for example, if I see myself kind of as a classics man or a breakaway guy or kind of an all arounder, maybe I want to do well at some of the Flemish classics like Flanders U23 or Roubaix U23, and then maybe you have like a week off after the Flemish classics, and then you can start building back up to maybe an A race that you have in May, and then you do another week off or rest week, and then you build up again like another month. So you kind of just pick races where you think are suited for you, and then you build up to that point.
What do you think have been some of the best sort of training tactics that you've used to go from good to your peak? What are some of the things you and your coach have kind of crafted together there?
Yeah, I have some good workouts that are kind of race simulation that hit the zones that like will be the hardest point in the race. So a lot of VO2 and then a lot of like 40/20s or 10/50s or 30/30s. Um, and also these will come later into the ride, so you have more fatigue in the legs.
Mhm.
Because really, n- nothing. You have to be good for the whole race, but when it really matters is when you have the KJs in the legs in the end of the race during the final. And this is something that we've kind of implemented more this year, because last year we through the season we found some things that I needed to improve on, and then this year we were able to change some things in the training and it's worked better, I think.
That's awesome. What are some of those bigger changes that you've made that you've seen like, oh, this was a really good thing to switch up? just the difference in doing it later in the ride with the KJs in the legs, or any other things stick out?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the major changes in my training is just doing the efforts kind of later into the ride
Hmm.
to build that fatigue resistance. Also, I did change, like, I got a nutritionist this year, which I think has really helped me stay at a better weight. Last
Hmm.
year, I was kind of doing that all on myself and taking bits from teammates, like, and just getting advice from guys. But sometimes what works for one guy might not work for you. So
Hmm.
having a nutritionist, I think, has really helped me stay at a really optimal weight. Because last year I've still gotten sick of a fair amount this year, but not nowhere near how much I was getting sick last year. And I think if you're not like at your optimal weight and you're too low or you're fluctuating too much, it really takes a toll on your immune system. So I think nutritionist coupled with a bit of a change in training has made a big difference in my performance.
That's awesome. When you're doing your big base blocks and everything, what metrics do you use while you're riding? Do you heart rate, power, RPE, a mixture of the three, anything else?
Yeah, so my coach will give me sometimes rides where it's like a 5, 6 hour ride, and keep it, I think, like 70% of my max heart rate. I keep it below that. So
Mhm.
for me, that would be keep it below like 140. Um, so on those types of rides, I'm solely looking at heart rate, and sometimes your heart rate, like for no reason, will like jump up a couple beats. So you can really going from riding like a comfortable like endurance pace on a climb, and you see your heart rate creeping up, and you really got to back it off because
Mm.
it's a discipline thing. And then longer and longer you do these rides in the off season, your heart rate will become much more steady, and then from there, I kind of we ramp into doing more like tempo, sub threshold work, uh, and then boom, you're into the season. You start doing your VO2 stuff to get sharp.
Awesome. Do you go in the gym, or do you think it's not worth it?
For me, in the off season, I do quite a bit of gym. I mean, what's quite a bit, I don't know, but I do two times 2 times a week, and that's enough for me. Because for me, I get super sore from the gym, and it's not like the day after either. It's kind of like 2 days after I get sore, so it
Mm.
can disrupt your training if you're doing like a lot of VO2 and hard sessions during the season. So for
Hmm.
me and my coach, we found it best just to work on the work on it during the off season, and also it can fluctuate your weight too. If you're a person who holds a lot of muscle mass more than the other person, muscle weighs a lot more than fat. So if you have 2 kilos of muscle that like you really don't need, it makes a big difference.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. Who's your coach these days?
I'm coached by Simon Kessler, no relation to me, but
Uh,
yeah, he's a cool guy.
That's funny. Um, which do you prefer for training, solo ride or group ride with some buddies?
For me, solo riding.
Always?
No, I have I like to occasionally go out with like if it's just an endurance ride, I love to go out with friends. But these days you have so much structure almost every day in the week that I prefer to just go solo.
Okay, that's cool. What's when you're talking about structure, do you have like volume target on some weeks in the back of your mind, or do you guys break it up more by like, hey, you got 2 intense sessions, or how do you manage the balance of volume and intensity in the training calendar?
Uh, so I mean, yeah, of course you go on your training peaks and you have your sessions the whole week and you can see what your volume is, but at the back of my mind, it's not really there. Mainly, I just know like, okay, tomorrow I have these efforts at the end of the ride, so I can roll out with my buddy here and do a couple hours, but then I got to jet off and do my own thing, or I can see the next day. Oh, I've got an endurance day, so I can do a cool ride with a friend. But then some days you have like a really structured workout where you have like a warm up, and then you have some efforts at the start, and then you have like you did have efforts throughout the whole ride. So some days can be more technical than others for sure.
What's like a banger session that you really enjoy, something that has a lot of efforts in it?
I did this one actually yesterday. It was really nice. I did a 90-minute warm up or like just endurance riding, and then 10-minute threshold, and then And then after that, you do three sets of or two sets of 3 minute efforts with 2 minutes rest in between, four times each. And then at the end of the ride, you do 10 times 10 minutes or 10-second sprint with 50 seconds recovery. It's like a 5 hour ride. That one was really nice.
That's pretty solid day out there.
Yeah, quite tiring.
Which do you prefer when we get into the races, stage races or 1 day race?
I like stage races.
What makes you pick that?
I think I'd go better. Like, um, I don't maybe. Oh, it's a hard question because a 1 day race can also be nice, but I think maybe my attributes as a rider, I maybe feel better in the last week of a 1 week stage race than maybe somebody else. So it gives me an opportunity to get a result. And
Mm.
also, like if you have 7 days in a row and a lot of the days suit you, and one day goes wrong, or like because in cycling maybe it's not all up to you. Sometimes a lot of shit can go wrong. So like it gives you just like more motivation for the next days because you're like, okay, today got fucked up, but tomorrow I can try again, and tomorrow I can try again. But on a 1 day race, it's like a lot of stress on that 1 day because that's your one opportunity.
Yeah, very true. I think Stephen Bassett was on here and he's like, man, people talk about like the perfect day when everything came together. He's like, no, you win a bike race when just the fewest things went wrong. He's like, it's never perfect, but when it does go bad,
Yeah,
you get the next day to look forward to. So,
yeah, exactly.
what do you think's like one of the number one things that's helped you get as fast as you've become?
I wouldn't say that I'm super fast these days, but I think just honestly hard work and determination. Because I don't think I have anything special or different from the next guy. Just I work super hard, I think, and you just train hard. You follow what your coach gives you, and things will work out, I think.
That's good. Maybe it's also your humility. So that plays into it as well. Is there anything on the flip side, anything you've ever done that you're like, ooh, that kind of slowed me down or that held me back a little bit?
Yeah, also just not listening to your coach because sometimes it's a lot about holding back. Like you may be feeling really good 1 week and your coach gives you just a 3 hour day easy or a 1 hour recovery ride and you have some friends that are going out on a 5 hour ride and you're like, oh man, and they're exploring some new roads that you've never done. You're like, oh man, I really want to go with them. And you say, oh, screw it, I'm gonna go with them. That can really mess up your training because your coach knows best. Like if you listen to your coach, you'll probably be as fast as you can be. And if you think that you're smarter than him and you want to do your own thing, maybe it won't work out. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But yeah, not listening to your coach can set you back.
All right, fair enough. What's are there any challenges that you've encountered in life off the bike that has somehow that you've overcome that have helped you become a better athlete or cyclist?
Hmm. Uh yeah, well, I have ADHD, but I feel like a lot of people have this. But in school it was really hard for me to like focus and sometimes I would get some bad grades and my parents would get upset with me and I think my ADHD has like taught me some patience, like to just have patience and believe in yourself and just really like be focused because I had trouble focusing when I was younger and I learned some coping mechanisms or just learned how to manage it and yeah, it taught me better focus and time management and all those things that you just need to be like a functioning adult. And especially when I moved over to Europe as an 18-year-old and now I live by myself, but as a first year under 23 I lived with another guy and just like you kind of have to grow up super fast, so it just helps you be a, a functioning adult in society, I suppose.
I think, as you say, like it's not just an athlete, but there's so many things pulling for our attention these days. You open up your
Yeah,
phone, it's like all these other things going on. It's like to be able to narrow that down, like, all right, this is what I'm focusing on today. Here's what I got to go accomplish. That's huge. So I think that's a huge gem to pass on to people. Try and find focus in what you're doing each day.
yeah,
Easy to get distracted.
for sure.
What's your best attribute in cycling? How do you use that to your advantage in races?
Ooh, I think my ability to seek opportunity. I think I'm pretty good at well, I don't know, pretty good, but I think for me, I can read a race and tell like when it's the right time to like if a move goes, if I can just tell like maybe if that's a good move to jump in or not, and um, being there and being able to find that opportunity, I think that's maybe my better attribute.
What do you go in on that a little bit? Because I think this is a really, and I don't know if you think, is this something that you can teach someone, or is that just like the sixth sense? Because there's definitely racers that struggle to understand that. They don't know when they should go. And I always tell someone, if you're thinking about it, you missed it. Like it's gone. Like it's got to be like, that's the move, and you go. And was there anything that helped you become good at that, or that you can think back on, like when you first started racing?
Yeah, I think I definitely haven't always been good at it. I know some guys like naturally just from the get-go are just really naturally gifted racers. But for me, just the last 2 years being fully, last 3 years really being just fully like in the deep end in Europe and racing, because I never really raced in America. My first year of really racing was my last year juniors after the COVID year. And that was all in Europe. And then last year is a first year under 23. Just from race experience, you learn like you have to lose so many races. I don't even say losing; it's just learning. Like when you're not in that winning group in a race, you've seen the race winning move go, so you kind of like learn. Okay, that moment, that's how that felt. Like when that race winning move went, how was I feeling in that moment? Where was I in the group? Was I in the back? Was I in the middle? Was I in the front? And then you kind of learn, okay, maybe I need to ride on the sides of the peloton because if a move goes up on the right or the left, I can be there and just use a minimal amount of energy and just stick on the back of a guy who's attacking and move up. So you learn these little gems throughout racing and just being in it, and then it just will click. And for me this year, it just kind of clicked, and I was able to get in a lot of moves, and quite a few of the moves ended up being race winning moves. And then you're learning how to race in the final. And I haven't raced finals a lot in my career until this year. I'd say I only raced one final of a road race as a junior. So you don't even know how to really win a race. So then when you're in the race final,
Hmm.
how do you tactically know how to win the race? So that this year, that's what I'm really trying to learn is in the final of a race, what can I do tactically to win this race? Because okay, it's one thing when you're the strongest rider in the race and you can just win off of your legs, you know. But when you're not the strongest guy like me, often I have to use my brain, and so I'm just trying to learn a lot this year.
Dude, that's amazing. And I think it's it really highlights that if you want to become a good bike racer, your best version of a bike racer, you need to go do it a lot. And you need to put yourself in those scenarios that you're talking about. It doesn't just you don't just have these watts per kg and you go to a bike race and it like unfolds perfectly. You need to go and like learn from all that. And you're doing this post race personal analysis. Passing that on to people is massive because I always feel bad for athletes when they're like, well, these are my 3A races, quote unquote. And I'm like, wait, but are you only doing 4 races this season? They're like, yeah. I'm like, well, it's kind of hard to have an A race when like you're never really racing. Like it's
Yeah,
a lot of people are going to have so much more experience than you. So I think that's a really good thing for a lot of us to pull out from that comment. What's the thing that you want to improve most on this season?
yeah, probably what I just said, like my tactical knowledge and
Mm,
ability to read the final.
okay.
Um, because it's one thing to be able to get into the final, and then it's one thing to be able to win from the final. Um, and I don't really have a good sprint, so I would have to kind of go long,
Mm.
and just trying to figure out when the best time to go is something I'm trying to learn because I've missed a couple opportunities this year. So I think maybe next year I'll get it right.
There you go. Just keep going to bat.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything in your daily routine that shows sort of the biggest return to your success? I know it's hard to pick one thing, but something that you're like, man, this is just really works well for me.
It's not daily routine, the nightly routine, sleeping.
Sleeping.
I I get a lot of sleep. I think sleeping, like if you're gonna be a good athlete, number one priority should be sleep. I try to get between 10 to 11 hours every night. So I also have an Aura ring. I used to have a Whoop. There's not really a big difference between the two, but just tracking my sleep and just like feeling like I got a good night's sleep is like really important to me.
Hmm. What's you've already dropped a bunch of gems. What's a gem that someone has dropped on you? Maybe a best piece of advice you've ever received. And it doesn't have to be cycling related, maybe something life related, but something that sort of stuck with you through the years.
Yeah, I got the chance to I've got the chance to meet and race with Chris Froome quite a bit. Well, not quite a bit. I've raced with Chris once at Tour Rwanda, and I've met him a couple of times. But he's just told me like just enjoy it, like just be in the moment, just enjoy it because it goes so quick and like if you're a happy bike racer, you're a good bike racer. So just enjoy the life and yeah, remember you're living in your dream, you know?
That's amazing. I love that. When going from a dream state to maybe a time when you're not riding so well, or maybe you're finding yourself getting into these final moves, but you can't get the W, or maybe a time when you're just not riding well, what do you kind of do to course correct that? Maybe it's some mental coping, or like actually like, hey, we need to change this in my training. Have you ever come across those like times?
All the time, all the time. It's more often than not that you're riding bad than you are good. And like just recently I was really on the bike and I didn't do anything different. I just kept chugging along. You just keep doing what your coach gives you. If you feel tired one day, maybe tell him, "Hey, what do you think? Do you think I need a recovery day? Do you think not?" If he thinks, "Nah, just push through this one day," or "Yeah, let's give you a recovery day," then you just listen to him. But I just listened to my training and just did exactly what he told me. And then one day I was really bad on the bike, and then the next day it just turned around and I became really, really good on the bike. So I think just staying focused and determined and not going off course and not like nothing's working. So you get down on yourself and you go off your diet or you binge or you say and you go do like a 6 hour ride when you had a recovery day. Just like focus and stay on your plan and it'll work out.
Awesome. Let's talk about nutrition on the bike. When you're going on a 6 hour, let's say just long endurance ride or something, what are you doing for those days?
Uh, 60 to 90 grams of carbs an hour.
What form? People want detail, like
Uh,
drink mix.
yeah,
Are you doing candy? Are you
no.
doing burgers? What are you doing?
If it's with a couple buddies, mid-ride calf stop for sure, always. So a coffee and a pastry. But on the bike, 2 bars an hour. If the bars have 30 grams of carbs, average, kind of like what an average bar has, I'd say 2 bars an hour average. And if you have mix in your bottles, I mean, it's hard because then your first two bottles will have mix, and it's rare that somebody carries mix in their back pocket. So you always drink your two bottles first. So then you only drink your mix in the first 2 hours if you drink 2 bottles an hour or a bottle an hour. So I usually don't train with mix. I just train with water, and maybe I'll bring electrolyte tabs in my back pocket, like in one of those
Mhm.
plastic containers. But that has no calories really. So
Yeah.
2 to 3 bars an hour, I'd say.
What about on race day?
Yeah, first hour depends how hectic and crazy the race is. That for me depends whether I eat solids or liquids like gels. I've been more comfortable recently in the first hour and two of a race, so I'll eat solids like bars or rice cakes. Um, but later towards the final, it's only gels, and I also obviously drink mix throughout the whole race. And there I shoot between 100 and 120 an hour. I've I've been having trouble with the higher end, like my gut. It's hard on the gut, kind of. So
Mm,
maybe towards the lower end of that, maybe 100 to 110, I find manageable.
okay. Any supplements in your routine?
I mean, yeah, uh, iron. I take vitamin C, just like the standard stuff, really. Vitamin D, zinc, just that. I mean, I suppose you could like all the stuff you find in a multivitamin, really, but I just take it individually.
Got it. Are you big into cycling tech?
Yeah, I mean, if I see a new thing pop up on my Instagram, I'm quite intrigued. I like aerodynamics, so anything that has to do with like a new time trial bike or something, I'm fascinated about.
Anything unique about your road setup?
Oh, the Astra is quite nice. I think it's a really good bike. Pretty aero, pretty light. The Factor Hanzo, the TT bike, is super aero. Um, so I think we have a good setup here in Israel
So we've been hearing you're talking about Aero. We've been hearing the jury is split on Aero socks. Yes or no?
for sure.
What brand do you like?
Just whatever the team gives me. So I guess now it's Echo.
Okay. I'll have to look into theirs. Do they stay up on a long ride, or do you use like any glue apparently people use, or hairspray?
Yeah, we have the sticky spray in the team bus that we use on races. But if they're brand new, they'll stay up. But after a couple washes, they'll fall down. So you got to put the sticky spray on
Okay. And so now this is good to have someone who's been doing this. Are you spraying the spray on your skin and then putting the sock on, or do you spray it like right over the sock?
the skin, and then put the sock on.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. What's anything underrated in cycling that you're like, man, I can't believe more people aren't into this?
Just cycling. I can't believe more people aren't into cycling. It's a freaking cool sport, dude. Like
Dude, best answer ever.
dude, I'm in America and like everybody just gives me crap for being like a lycra dude, like wearing lycra. I'm like, dude, I promise you, it's sick. Like all you bandwagoners on F1, like just because of Drive to Survive, like come on, cycling is just as cool.
That is incredible, man. No one has ever said that. I am with you on that 100%. I didn't even, yeah. I mean, there was a guy in my high school that raced that I had no idea. And we actually linked up when I got into it. And I was like, dude, I didn't even like you were doing this when we were in high school. Like, I didn't even know that there was like a club in our area. It's just not, I don't know. It's just America. People don't know about it.
Yeah, I also guess it's maybe not the most accessible sport. It's quite expensive when you like really want to start racing. It can be expensive, and just tires and tubes and CO2. Like to get into it, it's not accessible to all people, but neither is F1, and I guess people really like F1. So
Very true. Yeah. I always think of like people that I knew someone that did like motocross, and it's just that bill is big. So,
yeah, yeah,
my
yeah,
$50 tire is not too bad, even though I do bitch about it.
yeah.
Uh, on the other side, what's overrated in cycling?
uh, Aero. I mean, I guess I wish it was like the old days when it was just power. Everybody was just whoever won was the most powerful. But now, like TT positions, it's really the whoever's the most aero. Um, yeah, I'd say Aero's pretty overrated to be honest.
All right. What's your biggest inspiration in kind of pushing forward? As you said, there's a lot of days where things aren't going great. It's a ridiculously hard sport to get W's in what just keeps you going?
Wow. I really honestly, I mean, obviously, I take inspiration from all my friends and colleagues, those who I look up to maybe or want to like kind of emulate. When they're doing well, it gives me like motivation to also do well. But oftentimes, like not everybody's doing well, so you have to find inspiration in other things. And I think I'm maybe quite lucky that I just am driven, and I find like cycling is just like my biggest passion in life. So I never lack uh, the desire to go out on a bike ride. Like I've never just been like, oh, I hate cycling. I don't want to do it. I'm just like I'm pretty blessed in that regard that like it's my biggest passion. So I find inspiration on just going out on a endurance ride and just maybe don't put any music in and just like enjoy nature and enjoy life and that I'm healthy and happy and yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great perspective, man. You mentioned some pros and anybody that you look up to or that you have been able to ride with more on the regular that just you've been able to learn a lot from?
Yeah, for sure. Kevin Vermarka is probably one of those guys that he was on Lux when I was I think when I was a cadet, so like 15, 16. before I was really into cycling, but he went on to Action and then went on to DSM. But I always kind of looked up to him as like somebody I want to be like, and we've gotten quite close over the years, and we ride all the time in Girona and back in California because he's also from California.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I take a lot of inspiration from him and advice, and I learn a lot from him as a person and as a bike racer.
What do you think is one of the things that stick out as you're saying that you've learned about for being a better person? And let's do two questions. Person one
Well, I think
and
I think it's combined, like just patience, like because I've seen him have some struggles in his career and health and life, and I've had a lot of the same issues, and he's been super patient and just fought through and battled through it, and I try to emulate that because it's not always a smooth road, and if you can just try and stay on the straightest line possible, you'll get to your destination as fast as possible. So, uh, yeah.
yeah, sometimes it's, just being persistent and staying on that road is who wins, not who's out in front right off the bat. It's
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Patience can be tough though. It's
It
not
can be. It can be really hard to see the bigger picture when there's a lot of other crap being thrown at you. So yeah, persistence and focus and patience are some things that are really hard to learn. But I've been able to see him do it and also be able to do it. So
so these are some great lessons from a person. What about maybe is there any race memory where you've learned something that stuck with you?
uh, it's hard to say because he's a different type of rider than me. So he used to always tell me like the Liège best on Liège under 23 really suits you, and I'm in the back of my head I'm like, oh, dude, it doesn't. But he gave me a lot of tips about that bike race because he won it as an under 23, and so he just told me how like the race will unfold, and I haven't done well in that race yet, but the advice that he's given me on that race, I always keep it in the back of my head when I'm in that race.
That's awesome. What do you most look forward to in the season? It doesn't have to be the rest of this year, but like what races are you really like, man, I would love to win that race someday?
Yeah, Roubaix under 23, and when if I turn pro, hopefully when I turn pro, um, proper Roubaix. I think that's just a hard fucking race, man. That thing is so savage.
So that you're into the classic one day, just let's go get gnarly.
Yeah, I think winning Roubaix would be the that would just make my life. That would be the coolest thing ever.
That's awesome. Is there anything that you've learned about cycling, this underrated sport, that's made you better at cycling over the years?
Uh, Say that again. Anything that
Yeah, so
I've
you kind of
learned from
like you
cycling?
dropped a lot of the. I'll try and pick something that you've learned about cycling that's made you better at cycling. So you're like, oh man, had I known this when I first started, this would have made me better.
Something that I've learned about cycling that's made me better at cycling. Uh, hmm. I mean, I guess like pacing, for example. I like on an effort uh in a race, like on a climb for me, like knowing your type of rider, I can't
Mm,
really go with all the accelerations. So, for example, if people know João Almeida, he maybe isn't always there, but like he'll diesel his way up and will be in the final of a climb. For me, I find myself as a similar type of rider. Like I can pace myself well on an effort like that, like on a climb, and that I didn't really know before, but I learned about it, and now I try to implement it in
mm,
not only training but racing.
that's awesome. What about this is an awkward question for a lot of people. Finish this sentence. I never dot dot dot.
I never give up.
I like that. What about so you've let's talk maybe for this one's for like the junior athlete, or it actually could be anybody who's just trying to improve, but people will watch like, man, this guy's in Europe, he's doing some cool things. What are maybe three skills that you would pass on? It's like, hey, these really helped me get here that will help them find success.
Yeah. First, as a junior, finding your way onto a team that gets over to Europe as an American is
Mm,
hard. That is hard these days. And I think it has always been. So being outgoing and your networking skills is really important. Like don't think that like it'll come to you. You should always be going to them. So send those emails. If you're at a big race as a junior, like Valley of the Sun or Tosh, go up to the director of I guess the big team now is Hot Tubes. Go up to the director Toby and introduce yourself and just tell him about yourself and just tell him to keep an eye out for you because you'll be doing some big things and in the back not a lot of kids are going to do that, so in the back of his mind he'll be like, oh, this kid maybe has something, and he'll watch you and maybe you'll get a call from him. I'd say that's probably the number one thing I have to tell juniors because for me that's how I got on Lux. I wasn't, it was a COVID year, so not a lot of people had results, but I reached out to Roy and I got on a phone call with him, and then um, he invited me on a ride, and we chatted, and we really got along. And then I got on Deluxe, and that changed my life. So just a simple message or a simple "Hey, how are you?" can go a long way.
Hmm. That's all. That's an amazing gem. I think, and especially as you said, a lot of kids aren't going to do that. So you're going to set yourself
Yeah,
apart from people right off the bat.
for sure.
What else you got? That's some very wise words. Any other ones that you can drop?
Obviously, take your opportunities because there's not so much racing in America, and the only way to get to Europe, I guess, is to get some results in America. So really be focused in the training. These days it's crazy. Some juniors are training like professionals. So uh, make sure you're doing everything. I know you still want to have your life because you're in high school and got all this, but maybe if you really want to focus on cycling, be on that, be on the straight and narrow.
Hmm. Do you think it's good that people are focused so much on it, or do you think it's better to have like some of these other like sports in your life? Maybe you're doing another team sport, or do you think it's necessary to be all in on the bike?
Yeah, for me, I did like football, baseball, basketball up until freshman year, and then um, yeah, sophomore year, I kind of just switched to mountain biking, but still not super high level. I was never really good. And then just made
Doing
the,
like Nike and stuff.
yeah, exactly. Um, and then made the switch to full time road once COVID happened because I was still thinking that I wanted to only do mountain biking before then. We had one race that season and then it got canceled because of COVID. And then I switched to road. Um, so to answer your question, it depends on the type of person you are. If you really desire that social life and the parties and all that stuff, then I guess try and find a really healthy balance between the two. Um, but if your main goal is cycling and you don't really need the other um, like parties and that stuff, then yeah, go 100% because if it's your dream, then chase your dream 100%. Don't give it anything less than 100%.
That's awesome. Yes. What's with the, we're recording this in August 21st. We'll probably post in like September though. What remaining races do you have coming up that you're mostly looking forward to?
Yeah, I have some one days left on the calendar. Mur Classic here on the 30th, and then um, some one days in like Britannia and France. So I'm looking forward to these as these are kind of like the last opportunities of the season, and then I'm reserved for a couple of races in October. Um, so not so many races left, but I'm I'm riding decent at the moment, so hopefully I can capitalize on the good legs.
Heck yeah. We'll be rooting for you. And what's the best way for people to keep up with you? You're on Instagram. Do you blog, Twitter, Strava, et cetera, et cetera? We'll put
Yeah,
some
really
links.
just Instagram and Strava. Sometimes I'll post a vlog on YouTube if I'm feeling up to it, but that's a lot of work. So mainly just Instagram and Strava.
What's the YouTube channel? Is it just Cole Kessler?
Yeah, it's just my name.
Go, everybody go subscribe, get him some subs. Man, thank you so much for doing this. Any parting words for all the listeners?
No, yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh man, thank you. We really appreciate this. Definitely drop some good insights for all of us amateurs, juniors, those trying to get to your level. And so everybody listening will definitely take something from him. So I really appreciate that. And guys, go follow him. Check out the links in the bio or in the show notes, Instagram, hit him up on YouTube, and we'll talk to you soon.